There is a specific kind of aroma that fills a room after something significant breaks. It is not a peaceful silence, nor is it restful. It is the heavy, motionless quiet that arrives right after a project you spent months building gets canceled, after a long-term relationship quietly ends, or after a career path you felt entirely certain about suddenly closes its doors. You sit at your kitchen table, staring at a mug of coffee that has long gone cold, and your mind just loops through the same recurring question over and over again. What am I supposed to do now? In those heavy moments, the world outside keeps moving at its usual, indifferent pace. Cars continue to pass by your window. Neighbors make casual small talk on the sidewalk, and automated notifications keep arriving in your inbox, completely unaware that your entire personal landscape shifted overnight. It can feel deeply isolating to realize that while your internal world ground to a sudden and painful halt, time did not pause for a single second to allow you to catch your breath. The stark contrast between your inner turmoil and the external world's ongoing momentum can make you feel completely disconnected from everything around you. You might find yourself walking around your living room, picking up items aimlessly, adjusting small things on your desk, or staring at a blank computer screen for long stretches without registering a single word. Your mind is actively trying to process a reality that does not yet feel real. You replay recent conversations in your head, looking for the exact moment things began to unravel. You trace back your steps, searching for subtle signals you might have missed, or decisions you wish you could rewrite. But no matter how many times you run through those mental scenarios, the current reality remains completely unchanged. The structure you relied on for stability is simply no longer standing. This initial silence is often accompanied by a strange physical numbness. Your energy feels completely drained, yet your mind remains on high alert, scanning for solutions to a problem that cannot be solved in an afternoon. You might feel an overwhelming urge to immediately do something, anything, to fix the situation, to fill the void, or to make the sharp discomfort go away. You want to send that frantic message, write that quick explanation, or jump straight into planning the next major chapter. But reacting out of panic usually leads to chasing quick fixes that do not serve you in the long run. In these moments, even the most familiar spaces in your home can feel slightly altered, almost unfamiliar. The routine you followed yesterday morning suddenly feels irrelevant, and the calendar invites for next week look like remnants from a completely different life. It is natural to feel a sudden wave of fatigue, as if the mental energy required to accept this shift has exhausted your physical body. You sit down, stand up, check your phone, put it back down, and realize that no notification is coming to magically undo what has occurred. There is also a subtle pressure that creeps in from your own expectations. You might feel like you need to immediately present a brave face, to act as if you are completely unfazed, or to immediately demonstrate to everyone around you that you have a backup plan already lined up. We live in a culture that values quick recovery and constant progress, which makes the stillness feel almost wrong, as if taking a day to sit with a setback is a sign of weakness. But rushing to put on a show of resilience before you have even absorbed the news only creates a deeper layer of exhaustion. Yet, sitting in that quiet, as uncomfortable and heavy as it feels, is actually the very first necessary step of genuine rebuilding. It is the moment where you allow the dust to settle before taking your next step. It is where you pause long enough to stop reacting out of instinct and start observing reality clearly. The quiet creates a brief space between the moment of impact and the moment of action. In that space, you begin to gather yourself again. You do not need to have all the answers today, nor do you need to figure out the next 5 years of your life before sunset. You only need to acknowledge where you are right now, right in this room, in this quiet moment, without rushing to hide from it. Before you react, before you rush to fix anything, leave a quick affirmation in the comments below. I am ready to rebuild, one day at a time. Let that simple statement serve as your baseline starting point today. When plans fall apart, our immediate instinct is usually to rush past the discomfort. We tell ourselves to stay positive, or we try to distract ourselves with endless tasks just so we do not have to sit with the reality of what happened. We clear out the office desk in 20 minutes, archive old photos on our phone, or pretend that a major setback is just a minor inconvenience. But rushing past loss rarely works. It simply buries the frustration under the surface, where it sits quietly, waiting to resurface later, when you least expect it. Starting over requires you to look directly at what broke without trying to sugarcoat it or minimize the impact. If you poured 3 years of effort into an endeavor that ultimately failed, acknowledge that loss. Admit that you are disappointed, that you are tired, and that things did not turn out the way you had hoped. You do not need to put on a brave face for anyone right now. Honest rebuilding begins only when you stop pretending that the collapse did not hurt. There is a prevalent belief that looking back or grieving a loss is counterproductive, that any time spent acknowledging pain is time wasted. We are often encouraged to pivot immediately, to find the silver lining before we have even processed the news, or to declare that everything happens for a reason. While finding perspective is valuable eventually, forcing it too early acts like a bandage over an untreated wound. You cannot genuinely move forward while carrying unacknowledged weight in your arms. When you refuse to acknowledge the magnitude of what ended, you end up carrying quiet resentment into your next chapter. You might notice yourself becoming unusually defensive, quick to anger over small setbacks, or hesitant to fully commit to new possibilities. This happens because the original disappointment was never given space to be recognized. It remains an open thread in your mind, pulling at your attention every time you attempt to build something new. Acknowledging what was lost means honoring the effort, time, and hope you invested into that vision. It means admitting that you genuinely cared about the outcome and that the ending mattered to you. Whether it was a career path that took years to cultivate, a deep personal bond that defined your daily routine, or a creative goal that gave you a sense of purpose, that investment was real. Admitting that the outcome hurts is not an admission of weakness. It is a recognition of your own investment. Consider how much mental energy goes into maintaining the illusion that you are unaffected. You carefully frame your updates to acquaintances. You downplay your disappointment in conversations. And you try to convince yourself that it was all for the best before you are truly ready to feel that way. This performative optimism is exhausting. It takes a tremendous amount of effort to pretend you are fine when a significant part of your life has just been reshaped without your consent. We often fear that if we allow ourselves to fully feel the disappointment, we will get stuck in it forever. We worry that giving voice to our frustration will drag us into an endless spiral of despair. But the opposite is usually true. Avoidance is what keeps the past alive and haunting, while direct recognition allows it to settle into history. When you name what you lost, you strip it of its vague, overwhelming power over your present focus. Think of this process as taking an inventory after a major shift. You cannot accurately measure where you are going if you refuse to mark down where you currently stand. When you acknowledge the weight of what was lost, you are not wallowing in self-pity. You are simply refusing to live in denial. You are giving yourself the respect of acknowledging your own history before you turn the page. It is also important to realize that grief over a lost opportunity is not linear. One day, you might feel completely past it, ready to tackle a new challenge with fresh energy. And the next day, a subtle reminder might bring a sharp wave of regret right back to the surface. Expecting yourself to recover on a rigid timeline only adds unnecessary frustration to an already challenging experience. Giving yourself space means accepting these fluctuating emotional waves without judging yourself for not being further along. Allowing yourself to feel the weight of what happened creates a necessary boundary between the past and the future. It gives you permission to lay down the expectations of that former chapter so you do not carry them as invisible burdens into your next steps. It is the bridge between what was and what can be. You are not dwelling on the past when you look at it honestly. You are simply clearing the workspace so you can begin again with a clear mind and an unburdened spirit. One of the hardest parts of starting over is disentangling who you are from what happened to you. When a venture fails, it is easy to shift from thinking that plan did not work to believing I am a failure. When a career path comes to a sudden end, you might catch yourself wondering who you even are without that job title attached to your name. When a personal bond breaks, you may start viewing yourself as inherently difficult to connect with or unsuited for long-term commitment. This subtle psychological shift happens silently, but it completely alters how you interact with the world moving forward. Consider how much energy goes into maintaining an image of stability and achievement. From an early age, we are taught to introduce ourselves by our primary roles, our professional titles, or our long-term goals. We construct our sense of self out of these external markers, using them as proof of our competence and place in society. When those details disappear overnight, it can feel like your identity vanished along with them. The void left behind is not just a practical gap in your daily schedule. It feels like an existential vacancy where your self-worth used to reside. But your fundamental worth was never actually tied to the permanence of those circumstances. A blueprint falling apart does not mean the builder lost their skill, vision, or ability to build. Recognizing this distinction is what keeps a temporary setback from turning into a permanent belief about your capabilities. When you fuse your identity with an outcome, every setback becomes a personal indictment. A rejected proposal is no longer just a business decision. It becomes proof that your ideas lack value. A project that misses its targets ceases to be an operational challenge and becomes a reflection of your underlying incompetence. This merging of self and circumstance creates a state of perpetual vulnerability, where your peace of mind is entirely at the mercy of unpredictable external factors. You begin to walk through life defensively, constantly trying to protect a fragile self-image rather than engaging authentically with new opportunities. Detaching your identity from the outcome requires a deliberate separation between your actions and your intrinsic value. Your effort, your intentions, and your character belong to you, while the ultimate result depends on a vast network of variables that are often completely outside your control. Market conditions shift, priorities change, timing misses, and other people make decisions based on their own complex motivations. You can execute every step with precision and still face an unfavorable outcome. Treating the result as the ultimate measure of your personal quality ignores the complex reality of how the world functions. When you stop treating every result as a final judgment on your worth, a profound sense of psychological freedom emerges. You regain the space to experiment, to take calculated risks, and to engage with life without the suffocating fear of what a potential failure might say about you. Failure ceases to be an identity and returns to what it actually is, a piece of objective feedback. It is simply information telling you that a specific approach, strategy, or timing did not yield the intended result. That information is useful. It helps you refine your strategy, adjust your parameters, and approach the problem with greater insight on your next attempt. To cultivate this separation, pay close attention to your internal dialogue during moments of transition. Notice when your mind shifts from descriptive language to evaluative claims. Describing a situation accurately sounds like saying, "The project did not secure funding," or "The position was eliminated." Evaluative claims sound like, "I ruined my chance," or "I am incapable of sustaining progress." When you catch yourself using evaluative language, consciously reframe those statements to reflect objective facts. You are the observer and the author navigating these experiences, not the temporary wreckage left behind by an unexpected storm. Reclaiming your identity means recognizing that the core of who you are remains entirely intact, regardless of external collapses. Your capacity for curiosity, your problem-solving skills, your values, your willingness to learn, and your capacity to care are not property of the job title you lost or the project that fell through. They are portable qualities that belong exclusively to you, and they travel with you into whatever space you choose to enter next. As you prepare to step into a new phase, remind yourself that you are allowed to exist as a work in progress. You do not need to prove your legitimacy to anyone by displaying unbroken success. Your story is not defined by a single bad chapter, nor is your character proved by an uninterrupted run of smooth sailing. The ability to separate your inherent value from the temporary state of your circumstances is the ultimate foundation of lasting stability. It allows you to stand on solid ground even when the landscape around you shifts, knowing that no matter what happens to the plan, the person executing it remains capable, grounded, and ready to begin again. After the initial shock settles and you begin to separate your identity from the outcome, there comes a practical, quiet phase of assessment. Think of it like walking through a house after a major storm to see what is still standing. Still, you might find that while the main structure was damaged, the foundation is completely intact. The initial impulse after a collapse is often to view the situation as a total loss, as if everything you invested was completely wiped out. But total destruction is extremely rare. Beneath the visible wreckage of a failed plan or an ended chapter lies a substantial inventory of assets that remain entirely in your possession. The skill set you developed while working on that endeavor, that still belongs to you. The sharp problem-solving abilities you sharpened while navigating high-stress deadlines, those remain in your repertoire. The industry knowledge, the technical competencies, the communication habits, and the boundary-setting lessons you learned the hard way, those are permanent additions to your personal toolkit. Take a deliberate inventory of what remains. You are never starting over from absolute zero. You are starting over from experience. You carry forward every piece of wisdom, every practical ability, and every insight you gained along the way. The previous chapter may have ended abruptly, but the tools you gathered during it are still sitting in your hands, ready to be repurposed for whatever you choose to build next. To sort through these pieces effectively, you have to look past the emotional narrative and evaluate your situation with quiet objectivity. Divide your experience into distinct categories: what was lost, what was revealed, and what remains. What was lost might include a specific income stream, a daily routine, or a particular title, things that are tied to external circumstances. What was revealed includes the gaps in your approach, the red flags you might have ignored, or the limits of what you are willing to tolerate moving forward. But most importantly, what remains is the core infrastructure of your capability. Your resilience, your adaptability, your network of genuine connections, and your fundamental character are completely untouched by the failure of a specific plan. It is helpful to recognize that skills and insights gained in one context do not lose their value simply because that context ended. The discipline you cultivated while managing a complex project transfers directly into organizing your next career move. The emotional maturity you developed while trying to navigate a difficult relationship stays with you, enhancing your ability to establish healthier boundaries in future connections. Nothing you learned is wasted unless you decide to throw it away alongside the failed outcome. Every challenge you navigated served as an unintentional training ground, equipping you with capabilities you did not possess when you first began. Sorting through the pieces also means making a conscious decision about what to leave behind. Not everything from your past belongs in your future. A collapse often exposes habits, mindsets, or commitments that were no longer serving you anyway. Perhaps you were operating under unrealistic expectations, prioritizing the wrong goals, or overextending your energy to maintain an unsustainable dynamic. Use this transitional phase as an opportunity to discard those outdated burdens. You do not have to rebuild the exact same structure that fell down. You are free to design something far more aligned with who you are today. As you look at the remaining pieces spread out before you, resist the temptation to judge their immediate value based on how small they might seem in isolation. A single, reliable contact, a basic proficiency in a new tool, or a clear understanding of what you dislike are all solid building blocks. When assembled with intention, these modest pieces form the groundwork for your next chapter. The previous structure served its purpose for a time, but the materials left behind are more than enough to construct something sturdier, wiser, and far more resilient than what came before. When everything feels ruined, there is a strong, almost desperate urge to fix everything overnight. You open a fresh notebook, write down 10 ambitious goals, rearrange your daily routine entirely, and attempt to construct a complete, flawless, new life by Monday morning. You try to fix your career, your fitness, your finances, your sleep schedule, and your social life all in one single, intense burst of willpower. But trying to rebuild everything all at once usually leads to quick exhaustion and inevitable frustration. When you are already running on low emotional energy after a major setback, asking yourself to execute a massive multi-front life overhaul is simply setting yourself up for burnout. This compulsion to rush the rebuilding process is a natural defense mechanism. When your world feels unstable, your instinct is to construct as much certainty as possible, as quickly as you can. You want to prove to yourself and to anyone watching that you are back on track, completely unaffected, and moving forward at full speed. But real, lasting momentum is never built through frantic overcompensation. Attempting to manage 5 major lifestyle shifts simultaneously spreads your attention so thin that even the smallest bump in the road can feel like a total collapse. You end up exhausting your limited stamina on trying to maintain an unsustainable pace, leading to a cycle of starting and stopping that leaves you feeling more defeated than when you began. Starting again does not require a grand, sweeping gesture or a dramatic transformation sequence. It requires manageable, almost imperceptibly small actions that build quiet, compounding strength over time. It is updating just one single section of your resume today instead of applying to 50 jobs in a panic. It is sending a single follow-up email tomorrow. It is clearing off your work table so you have a clean, calm surface to sit at tomorrow morning. These tiny actions might seem insignificant in the large, heavy shadow of a major setback, but sustainable progress is built through small, consistent efforts, not sudden, heroic leaps. When you narrow your focus down to a single, manageable step, you lower the friction of taking action. A massive goal creates anxiety because your mind recognizes the immense energy required to achieve it. A tiny action, however, bypasses that resistance. Completing that tiny task gives you a genuine sense of agency, proving to your nervous system that you are capable of influencing your reality again. Those micro victories accumulate quietly, creating a solid base of confidence that allows you to take slightly larger steps next week. Give yourself permission to move at a deliberate, sustainable pace. Rebuilding your life is not a race against an arbitrary clock, nor is it a performance for an audience expecting immediate results. You do not have to fix your entire existence today. You only have to manage the next few hours. Prioritize stability over speed. Choose one small anchor point in your daily routine, and make that solid before you try to change anything else. By resisting the urge to fix everything at once, you grant yourself the time and space required to build something that actually lasts. You stop reacting out of panic and start making choices grounded in clarity and intention. The future you want to create is not constructed in one chaotic day of hyper-productivity. It is laid down quietly, brick by brick, through small choices repeated consistently until the new foundation is strong enough to hold your weight. There is an unavoidable, prickly awkwardness that comes with starting over, especially if you had previously reached a comfortable level of authority, mastery, or routine in your past endeavor. Walking into an unfamiliar environment, learning a completely new set of tools, or finding yourself at the very bottom of a steep learning curve can feel frustrating and deeply unsettling. You might catch yourself replaying memories of how effortless things used to be when you were in control, when you knew every nuance of your work, and when your daily tasks felt second nature. Standing at the starting line once more often brings a sharp sense of friction. You know what high-quality work looks like, but your current execution lacks the polish, speed, and precision you are used to delivering. This gap between your refined taste and your initial ability can make you feel exposed, clumsy, or strangely out of place. You might hesitate to ask basic questions for fear of appearing inexperienced, or you might find yourself constantly trying to explain your past achievements to strangers just to prove that you used to be competent somewhere else. Being a beginner, again, demands a high degree of intellectual humility and quiet patience. It requires you to make peace with the reality that your initial attempts at something new will likely be imperfect, slow, and unrefined. Think back to the very first time you tried anything that you eventually came to master. The initial disorientation was simply the non-negotiable price of admission. Experiencing that exact same awkwardness today does not mean you are moving backward in life, nor does it mean you lack talent. It simply means you are actively engaged in the process of acquiring new capabilities. When you resist the reality of being a beginner, you create unnecessary internal friction. You spend valuable mental energy defending an ego that wants to appear already skilled, rather than directing that energy toward learning. When you drop the burden of needing to look like an expert immediately, a subtle shift occurs. The pressure to perform disappears, replaced by the freedom to observe, experiment, ask questions, and absorb information without pretense. It is helpful to remember that while you may be starting a new skill or entering a new domain, you are not a beginner at life itself. You bring with you a mature foundation of self-awareness, emotional resilience, and general wisdom that you did not possess the first time you were starting out years ago. Your past experiences have taught you how to learn, how to adapt, and how to recover from mistakes. The specific tasks in front of you might be new, but your ability to navigate uncertainty is already well established. Treat this uncomfortable phase as a temporary initiation rather than a permanent state. No one stays a beginner forever unless they stop trying. Every expert you admire once sat in the exact same quiet discomfort, making basic mistakes and figuring things out one step at a time. Embrace the awkwardness of learning as clear proof that you are growing. Give yourself the space to be bad at something new so that you can eventually become good at it. Knowing that every single day you show up, the curve flattens just a little bit more. When you are in the middle of a major life transition or rebuilding after a collapse, other people will inevitably have opinions. Well-meaning friends might offer unsolicited advice. Acquaintances might ask uncomfortable, probing questions about why your previous plans changed. Or you might look at social media and feel like everyone else is moving forward while you are standing completely still. This external noise, the well-intentioned suggestions, the subtle judgments, and the constant stream of comparisons can make an already heavy situation feel far more exhausting than it needs to be. When your circumstances are fluid, your confidence is naturally more vulnerable, making you far more susceptible to the views of those around you. An offhand remark from a relative about your timeline can send you into a spiral of self-doubt. A question about your next steps can make you feel defensive, as if you are required to present a fully formulated business plan just to justify your current existence. You might catch yourself trying to manage other people's perceptions, framing your situation in ways that make it look planned, strategic, or under control, purely to avoid the discomfort of their pity or skepticism. It is essential to establish firm boundaries around your mental focus during this sensitive period. You do not owe anyone an immediate, polished explanation for how you are going to rebuild your life. You do not need to justify your pacing, your choices, or your quiet periods to people who are not walking in your shoes or living with the consequences of your decisions. Most people offer advice based on their own personal fears, their need for safety, or their limited understanding of your specific reality. Filtering their input is not an act of arrogance. It is a necessary measure to protect your clarity. Comparing your quiet, unglamorous rebuilding phase to someone else's public highlight reel is another source of unnecessary pressure. Social media provides an endless feed of milestones, promotions, and achievements, carefully curated to show only the final, polished outcomes. When you compare your internal mess to someone else's external success, you are measuring your real-time struggle against a filtered illusion. Turn down the volume on external comparisons. Your timeline does not need to align with anyone else's expectations, and your progress does not require public validation to be real, valuable, and meaningful. Managing outside noise also requires you to choose your inner circle with extreme care. Not everyone in your life has earned the right to hear the details of your rebuilding process. Keep your plans close to your chest during the early stages, sharing your thoughts only with the few individuals who offer grounded, quiet support without demanding immediate answers. Guard your energy from critics, cynics, and chronic advice givers who care more about offering solutions than understanding your perspective. By stepping back from the noise of public opinion, you create the quiet space necessary to hear your own judgment again. You stop reacting to the expectations of others and begin making decisions grounded in your actual needs and values. The opinion that matters most during a transition is the one you hold when you look at yourself in the mirror at the end of the day. Trust your own pacing, honor your process, and let your eventual progress speak for itself without needing to explain the journey to anyone along the way. When the macro picture of your life feels deeply uncertain, long-term stability is found by constructing reliable micro-routines. You cannot force a prospective client to reply to your email today. You cannot single-handedly control how fast the job market moves, and you cannot predict the exact date when a complex situation will finally resolve itself. Trying to control those external, unpredictable variables usually leads to a state of chronic anxiety and helplessness. What you can control, with absolute certainty, is the basic rhythm of your immediate physical surroundings and how you structure the next few hours in front of you. Focus on establishing a solid, simple, daily baseline that operates independently of how you feel on any given morning. This baseline is not an ambitious, high-pressure routine designed to maximize every second of your productivity. It is a minimal, predictable framework that keeps your life grounded when everything else feels fluid. Waking up at a consistent hour, opening the blinds to let in daylight, making your bed, drinking a glass of water, taking a short walk down your street, and sitting down to focus for a set block of time each afternoon. These modest habits serve as structural anchor points. They preserve your dignity and keep your mind rooted in the present moment when the big picture feels too overwhelming to navigate. When you are going through a major transition, your mental energy is constantly consumed by uncertainty. Your brain is working overtime trying to calculate outcomes, evaluate risks, and adapt to unfamiliar circumstances. If you also have to negotiate with yourself every single morning about when to get out of bed, what to eat, or whether to sit down at your workspace, you burn through your limited willpower before you have even accomplished a single meaningful task. A reliable baseline automates the basic mechanics of your day, preserving your cognitive bandwidth for the decisions that actually matter. It is crucial that your daily baseline remains realistic and sustainable, especially during periods of high stress. Many people make the mistake of designing a rigid, ideal routine that requires peak motivation to execute. They schedule every hour from dawn until dusk, only to abandon the entire plan the moment they wake up feeling tired or unmotivated. A true baseline is built for your worst days, not your best ones. It is a floor, not a ceiling. It represents the absolute minimum standard of structure you maintain to ensure that your life does not drift into chaos, no matter how heavy the mental load might feel. Establishing this baseline also restores a crucial sense of agency. A major setback often leaves you feeling powerless, as if external circumstances are entirely in control of your destiny. Executing a simple, predictable routine every day quietly proves to your nervous system that you still hold authority over your own life. You might not be able to fix your overarching situation today, but you can successfully complete a morning routine, keep your workspace clean, and dedicate 2 uninterrupted hours to moving your projects forward. Those small, repeated acts of self-discipline accumulate, rebuilding your internal confidence long before external results become visible. When the macro timeline feels completely unpredictable, bring your entire focus down to managing the immediate micro timeline. Stop obsessing over where you will be 5 years from now, or even 5 months from now, and concentrate exclusively on executing the next 4 hours with intention. Lay down a solid, sustainable daily baseline. Stick to it with quiet consistency, and trust that these small, predictable actions will provide the steady momentum required to carry you through the uncertainty into your next chapter. One of the quietest, most persistent obstacles to moving forward after a collapse is the lingering attachment to how things were supposed to go. You might find yourself constantly comparing your current, messy reality to the neat, linear timeline you had planned out years ago. You had envisioned reaching a specific career milestone by this exact age, living in a particular city, achieving a certain level of financial security, or sharing your life with a specific partner. Holding on to that original blueprint while trying to build a completely new existence creates constant friction, casting a subtle shadow of disappointment over every fresh attempt you make. When you invest years of emotional energy into a specific vision, that plan stops being just a set of goals and becomes the framework through which you view your future. You map your security, your self-worth, and your sense of direction onto that imagined timeline. When it falls apart, the grief is not just about the tangible loss of a job, a project, or a relationship. It is about the death of the future you had already lived out in your mind. It feels like a betrayal of your own expectations, leaving you feeling adrift and cheated out of the destination you worked so hard to reach. The temptation to cling to the original blueprint usually comes from a deep desire for certainty. Recreating the old plan or desperately trying to get back on the exact same track feels safer than stepping into the unknown. You might attempt to force old strategies onto new, incompatible circumstances, or spend your time waiting for a past opportunity to somehow reopen its doors. But trying to build a new chapter using an outdated blueprint is like trying to navigate a newly altered terrain using an obsolete map. It forces you to ignore the reality of where you are standing today, causing you to miss the actual paths available in front of you. Releasing the original plan is not an act of defeat, nor is it a sign that your previous efforts were wasted. It is an act of practical, courageous acceptance. The old plan was constructed based on old information, past assumptions, and previous circumstances that simply no longer exist. Expecting your present self to fulfill a timeline created by a past version of you under entirely different conditions is an unfair burden. Be willing to trade the rigid picture of how things were supposed to be for the dynamic reality of what can be built right now. To let go of the blueprint, you must stop treating your life as a project that has deviated from its master plan. Life is not a linear construction project with a fixed schematic. It is an adaptive process. The detour you are currently navigating is not a temporary delay on the way to your real life. It is your real life happening in real time. When you stop viewing your current position as a mistake or a delay, you free up immense mental energy that was previously wasted on regret and resistance. Grieving the loss of the original plan allows you to clear space for a new vision to emerge. Acknowledge that the old goal was meaningful. Honor the effort you dedicated to it, and then grant yourself explicit permission to turn the page. You are allowed to change your targets, redefine what success looks like, and build something entirely different from what you originally envisioned. The future does not require you to honor a blueprint that no longer serves your reality. It simply invites you to look at the materials you have available today and begin designing a new structure with an open mind. Starting over is not a single, dramatic decision made in a moment of sudden inspiration. It is an intentional, unglamorous choice you must make every single morning. It is deciding that despite the residual disappointment, despite the lost time, and despite the lingering uncertainty of the outcome, sitting still is simply not an option. You do not need to feel completely confident, energized, or fearless before taking your next step. Waiting for fear to vanish, or for absolute certainty to arrive before you act, is a trap that keeps you permanently paralyzed. Courage is rarely a grand, dramatic feeling. Most of the time, it is just the quiet decision to try again today, despite the lack of guarantees. When you choose to start again, you step out of the passive position of being a victim of your circumstances and back into the active role of an agent in your own life. The collapse happened, the loss was real, and the setback was painful, but none of those facts strip you of your capacity to make a move today. The past possesses only as much power over your present as you yield to it through inaction. By choosing to lay down even a single brick today, you reclaim your authority. You stop waiting for conditions to become ideal, for people to validate your journey, or for the emotional weight to disappear entirely. You simply carry what you must and begin moving anyway. It is natural to feel a persistent sense of hesitation when embarking on a new attempt. Your mind, seeking to protect you from repeating past pain, will try to convince you that starting over is too risky, too tiring, or ultimately pointless. It will remind you of how much energy you invested last time and how little you feel you have left to give right now. But listening to that defensive instinct only shrinks your world, locking you inside the boundaries of a former loss. The discomfort of taking action in the face of uncertainty is temporary, but the quiet decay of standing still while life passes you by is far more damaging in the long run. Choosing to start again anyway means lowering the barrier to entry for your own efforts. You do not need to launch a massive project, write the entire book, or revolutionize your career before sunset. You only need to show up and execute the next logical step available to you. Action generates momentum, and momentum generates clarity. You cannot think your way into a new way of living. You must act your way into it. Every small effort you put forward acts as a vote of confidence in your future self, gradually shifting your internal focus from what was lost to what is currently being built. So take a deep breath. Clear off your desk. Open a blank page on your screen, or step out your front door. You have navigated difficult, uncertain periods before, and you possess the internal capability to navigate this one too. The future does not demand that you have every detail figured out right now, nor does it require you to feel entirely ready.